Welcome to the Daily Reflection Podcast with your hosts Michael L. and Lee M. This is a show where we provide inspiration through interviews with members of the recovery community. While we are not affiliated with any 12-step recovery program, you may hear them mentioned throughout the course of an interview. Well, Lee, here we are again. It's great to have you back. This is becoming a habit.
Yes, it's a good habit, though. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. Today is February 5th, and we've got a guest in today. I'm really excited to welcome Scott K. to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Scott, would you start us off by reading the daily reflection for today?
It'd be my pleasure. A glorious release. The minute I stopped arguing, I could begin to see and feel. Right there, step 2 gently and very gradually began to infiltrate my life. I can't say upon what occasion or upon what day I came to believe in a power greater than myself, but certainly I have that belief now. To acquire it, I had only to stop fighting and practice the rest of AA's program as enthusiastically as I could. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 27. After years of indulging in a self-will run riot, step 2 became for me a glorious release from being all alone. Nothing is so painful or insurmountable in my journey now. Someone is always there to share life's burdens with me. Step 2 became a reinforcement with God, and now I realize that my insanity and ego were curiously linked. To rid myself of the former, I must give up the latter to one with far broader shoulders than my own.
Wow, that was beautiful. Scott, did you have a concept of a higher power when you came into the program?
I identified then, and honestly still do identify as an atheist. But I knew, and luckily I had people who primed me to the idea of look for something larger. And luckily I had that gift of desperation we always talk about, where I managed, maybe for the first time in my life, to get out of my own way and to not know the answer to what that was going to be for me, and to sort of move through the program and let that arrive, and eventually develop an idea of a higher power. I'm like so many people, I'm not sure I could tell you exactly what it is. I could say some things about it, but I most definitely have one, and turning my life over to it is far and away the most important thing I do over and over again.
What was that desperation like for you when you first got in? And actually, let me ask you first, how long ago?
Yeah, so my first day in AA was July 24th, 2015, although that is not my sobriety date. But I came in fully ready to show everybody that I was going to rock this and I was fine. Right? I had had some problems. I had made a mess of my marriage. I was a disaster, but watch me get the ship right side up faster than anybody has ever done it. And so it might not have been the desperation of being broken that some people have. That came later. It was the desperation of, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. And I have to change. Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
Okay. I came in having just spent 10 years sort of in increasing chronic pain, which eventually led me to pills, which I almost immediately abused, and to sort of boosting those with booze wherever I could, to a degree I totally didn't admit to myself, to eventually slowly decaying into lying, stealing, all kinds of manipulation of just about everybody in my life, as I slowly sort of circled the drain. And eventually it got to a point, sequence of medical events and life events, in which I gave up. And the short part of it is I had one terrible injury that nobody could treat, so I just threw pills and booze at it and built a real story of I can't be the successful guy that everybody admires, but I can be the suffering guy who everybody kindly pities uh, as I create a kind of image of the strong suffering type who's kind of bearing it as well as I can. And then it got fixed, and then something else broke, and I had a whole new injury, and I was right back into out of the frying pan and into the fire, and it broke me. I gave up. I stopped trying to be the guy who sort of shouldered it well. I stopped trying to be the person who was managing this difficult situation, and mostly I was disappointed to wake up each morning. It was just too much pain. I stopped pretending I wasn't taking the pills aggressively and drinking aggressively, and I basically turned into a ghost. And that was when my wife at the time said, I don't think I can be married to you anymore. And basically looked at me and said, really, look at yourself. Are you happy? Knowing full well the answer was no, but I had been so deep in delusion that I would have said yes. And for the first time, I had to really face I was depressed and I was about to lose everything. What I didn't know at the time, that at least my marriage was already lost. But I thought I could save it. And so, series of events here, but mostly I showed up to AA ready to demonstrate how much I meant it. Where what I thought meaning it was put away the drugs and the booze, show how healthy and capable I am, and get everything right back on track instantly. Not recognizing how much deeper my problems were. And so that's how I arrived. And luckily, when, all of the God in there, I sort of knew I could skip over, right? I didn't have to let it stick to me, but I didn't really take it seriously. And it was only later, after I showed up in AA, and then things went badly, and then I went back out again. And, had a car crash that I was lucky didn't kill me or the other guy. And my wife at the time said, you have to leave. And my dad came to get me, and he said, we're bringing you to rehab. And that was where I began to recognize that I had to take this. I didn't know what God was. The whole God idea didn't really resonate with me at all, but I knew I had to figure out something. And I had to listen to the way people were telling me, let go of everything you know about what that word means, and just find something more powerful than you. And that turned out to be not too hard. So that started, and it was actually, I remember where I was in rehab. And I had been turned on to mindful meditation, which was good for me because I've got a nice anxiety disorder and some ADHD, which is pretty common around here. And I discovered it was a good way to, at least for a moment, be okay in my own skin without pills and without booze. And from that, I took the idea of, reading just little bits, very amateurish knowledge of what is the quote goal for Buddhists as they meditate, and it's to connect with reality. And that was something I could get behind. It was pretty clear to me how deluded I was, and that reality was stubbornly, quietly there, and not always accessible to me, but it was always right. And boy, was it bigger than I was. And it was in charge. And that was something that I could connect to and think, my goal is to get my delusions and my biases out of the way, even if just for a moment, and to connect with reality and to let it do what it does. And often finding out I had been trying to control reality. I had been trying to direct it, very much like the classic actor on the stage. And it took rehab to force me to take the hands off the wheel of my own, off of the wheel of my own life, to discover things started going better as soon as I stopped messing with them. And so turning them over to reality, which will, sit there quietly waiting for me, became a much easier way to turn my life over, to say over and over again, when I don't know what to do, try doing nothing and try noticing what's actually happening.
It's interesting because I think we drink to escape reality. We feel out there that reality is painful, if we even know what it is. And it says here in the daily reflection that nothing is so painful or insurmountable in my journey today. And do you find that to be true? Have you experienced pain
Just a
and
little.
suffering?
Yeah. I had to go through an evolution, which is why I think this daily reflection spoke to me, although so many of them do. At first, I thought the goal was to become like the Zen master who floats above reality, right? Like I'm so calm and so connected with my higher power that nothing can touch me and I will be fine. And that's when I realized that's how I had been living my life, is I thought through achievements. I had gotten the degree and gotten the coveted job and gotten married and had kids and had the house. And so now I'm untouchable, right? Life can't hurt me, which turned out to be monstrously not true, which then was when my disappointment began and I started, down that road where I couldn't turn back until I had to crash and go about it another way. And what I learned along the way, and this is sort of what a few years. So I suppose to answer this, I have to tell a little bit of the story of my relapse. And here I will voluntarily embarrass the hell out of myself. So I did my first year of sobriety with my sponsor telling me, okay, this is great. Watch out for that second year. It's a doozy. And I went through the first year and I was doing fine. And I thought I was doing okay. I think my sponsor sort of kept warning me because he noticed strange things about how I was approaching it. And sure enough, after that first year mark, I sort of dropped down on how many meetings I was doing. I started letting the other parts of my life, my work, and sort of even my parenting, sort of, oh, these are more important than my sobriety. I've got the sobriety thing. I have to pay attention to this other stuff now. I've put it off for too long. And within 2 months, and here's where I embarrass myself, I took my cat to the vet, and my cat had to have a procedure, had to have some teeth extracted. And they sent me home. Here's your cat, and here's some medication for the cat. And I got home, and I opened the bottle, and I said, oh, damn, I know what this is. This is Suboxone for cats. And it snuck in behind my defenses. And I slipped that night on that. And so I admit it took me about 3 days to admit it to my sponsor. And I sat down with him. And to his great credit, I wondered, was he going to welcome me with open arms? Was he going to, give me a hard time? And he did neither. He showed up and said, okay, first question, are you done? And I had to stop and think. Apparently I wasn't. I thought I had been. I thought I had that step one down, but I was kind of keeping my toe in the back door of this whole thing, leaving open the possibility of, I don't know what happens in the future. Maybe I'm fine, right? I never would have admitted it to myself. And so I said, I think I'm not, but I want to be. And I know that's somewhere I have to get, apparently. And then he looked at me and he said, started to think you were normal, didn't you? I said, yeah, apparently I did. And that's when I realized I had, in this embarrassing story, the perfect lifetime reminder Normal people don't snort their cat's Suboxone. They don't even think of it. It's not something they consider. It would never cross their minds. It's absurd, right? But for me, once it was in front of me, the way in which my thoughts and my awareness of the world and the consequences, right? I could have lost custody of my kids over this, but all of that just vanished. And I was on the automatic track because I had not done the work. And that's when I started to learn the real teeth behind the idea of turning it over and having a higher power and saying, when I am struggling, when things are pressing on me, work and kids and all of the things I feel so responsible for, they're such a big deal. That is when I have to catch myself and say, it's not all up to me. In fact, almost nothing's up to me. Turn this over. Let these things happen. Let myself fail if that's what's supposed to happen. And it'll be okay. But don't take it on and take it so seriously and let anything get in front of my sobriety. And that's what my higher power lets me do, is it lets me turn over anything and everything that can come up. And more painful things have come up. Everything from things with my elderly parents, frightening things with my kids and their health, crisis at work with someone dying of a heart attack. All of these major things come up, and I'm reminded by the people in the program, that looks hard, that looks painful, turn it over. You're not in charge, and it's okay. You're not supposed to be. Nobody expects you to, except you. And that lets me let it go. And it lets me arrive and be present to everyone and everything going on in the ways that I can be useful, the ways I'm supposed to be useful.
Well, Scott, I'm glad you made it back. It's not always a guarantee, right?
Thank you. So am I. Yeah, grateful that it didn't turn it into something any longer lasting than that, because it certainly could have. I have to remember the universe doesn't owe me anything.
Relapse is a part of my story as well. It's not mandatory for people that get sober, but it's certainly part of my story. And what caused me to relapse, well, apart from the fact that I'm an alcoholic, I feel like I had reservations. I felt like I could just get sober and then go back to normal. Do you feel like you had reservations, and do you think you might have some today?
Certainly I had reservations. I really believed that the goal was get sober, have one or maybe two insights that once I saw them, they would kind of be fixed of themselves. Right? Like, oh, I've got, I'm this very anxious person. I'll just acknowledge that and realize I was drinking and drugging at that, and now I'll be fine. Right? And it turns out, no, it's harder than that. But I also thought that I was fundamentally fine, that I was a good guy. I was capable. There was I was great, except I had taken a wrong turn. And it took time, quite a bit of time, to slow. And really, I'm glad it took time, because if it had all been revealed to me at once, I couldn't have handled it. I couldn't have understood it. It got revealed to me piece by piece that the behaviors that are so painful to me go all the way back to my beginning. Right? That old saying about, all you have to change is everything. And for me, it is just about anything is game. And I have had to work on, I had a sponsor who sort of said, yeah, we don't talk about sex and money enough in the program. And sure enough, issues with my own behaviors, issues with how I approached work, how I approached relationships, how I approached finances, all of it had to be fair game for me to see something new about myself, accept myself, and then figure out how to put those pieces of me in kind of the right order so they could work naturally. Right? Nothing had to be removed or stricken. It was just I was using it all wrong. And that's because somewhere along the way, I became afraid of myself. I became afraid of being seen for what I am. And so I contorted myself into a pretzel everywhere I went in order to try to be what other people wanted, what I thought other people wanted me to be, which was rarely actually what they wanted me to be. So I think it's an interesting question. Do I still have reservations, parts of myself that I would hold back as not eligible for being revealed and requiring work? And the answer is probably. I just don't know what they are yet. And I suspect I will run into trouble with them one thing at a time. And the thing that I hope for is that having taken a number of evolutionary steps thanks to this program and the people in it, I will get less and less resistant to seeing it and saying, yeah, that's the next one. That's the next project that I have to dig into, and hope that, I throw myself into it. And of course, my resistance is always tied to how afraid am I of something inside me that I don't want to be seen and that I don't want to admit to myself.
Do you feel comfortable in your own skin today?
Not always, but way more. It's one of the things I get today. And I realized this somewhere along my path of recovery. The thing that they talk about with drugs and booze giving you euphoria, I mistook euphoria for serenity. I thought, how can this be bad? It's making me feel okay in my own skin. And what I didn't realize is it's the kind of cheap saccharine version, right? There's no depth to it. It's just this superficial kind of thing. And of course, you can't go back to it forever, although heaven knows I tried, right? Until it almost killed me. But it was only in the program, doing the work, doing the meditation, going to the meetings, talking to people, that I finally had moments where I thought, oh, this is what real serenity, this is what it really feels like to be okay. And those moments make all of the work worth it. They're not always there. I still have anxiety. I am who I am. I still have the ADHD brain where I forget things and then my brain goes wandering off because something's shiny. But I've learned not to be hard on myself for that and how to work with it. And then I have those moments where I bring myself back and they hit me. The best ones are when I'm not looking for it. When I'm just having a moment, I'm having a mini vacation with my kids and I'm standing in the surf with my 11-year-old son who's trying to tackle me. And he's not quite big enough, but he will be soon. And I can kind of look out at the horizon over the water and him who's going to get older and teenagery on me real soon. And just think, I'm okay. I'm still here. And I'm enough. Flaws and all, I get to be here for this moment. And I get to notice that I'm having the moment and that I'll remember it. And that's what I'm working for day after day, is to be as okay as I can and to be there for those moments of, wow, I get to be a part of this.
The exact opposite of what we did when we were drinking and drugging.
I couldn't even tolerate the idea of a vacation or a holiday without making sure I had a full supply. Sounded excruciating, and it would have been excruciating at that time.
I'm being reminded of, alcoholism is just a symptom of the disease,
right?
Or drinking is just a symptom of the disease. What would you tell a newcomer who's listening to all of this?
I mean, I am at risk because I am me, of probably getting overly grandiose with this question. But that's okay. there's a lot of power in the message, you know, just don't drink and come to meetings. Like, just get started. Don't try to see further down the path. Just be here for another day. But it actually helped me to have those moments in early sobriety where people pointed out things. I mean, this to me was the point of going to speaker meetings and hearing somebody who had the seemingly impossible 10, 20, 30 years, right? Of hearing their story of who they used to be like and looking at them, having spent a little time with them and thinking, oh my gosh, this person is so different now. I guess some things are possible. But I suppose the thing that I would encourage, and I think it wouldn't be too soon, but one of my first days in the program, some old woman who I never saw again came up to me and said, I wish you a long, slow recovery. And my response to her at the time was, of course, outwardly, my response was, oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And my response inwardly is, F you. I've got incredible problems right now. I don't have time for a long, slow recovery. That's insane. That's not what I'm after. But that is what I wish for all the newcomers. And I want them to see how worthwhile it is. A kind of a message of you are in there somewhere, right? I sort of like to borrow. David Foster Wallace had a great quote about this in which he said, in the end, of course, you become yourself. And I buried myself starting at a very young age. I've only come to understand this lately. And the project of uncovering myself from everything that I heaped on top of that poor kid to try to hide and be good enough and be noticed and be worthy, all the pain that caused, I get to undo that now. And I don't know that it has a bottom, but every time I dig up another layer and get it out of the way, getting to be me is the best gift I've had out of this program. Not because I'm any great shakes, but because it's a pretty good experience being me when I don't make it hard.
Do you feel like Buddhism might be a good option for people that are struggling with finding a higher power and end addiction?
I think it is. I mean, I think in the vein of, if you're struggling, struggle in a positive direction of trying stuff. Don't struggle in the direction of how can I reject this? Go looking for what can work for me. And really, I'm not even, I wouldn't call myself, at best, I call myself a kind of secular Buddhist light, right? I sort of borrow some key concepts that are good enough for me and take them wherever I go. And, but I would certainly suggest to anyone who feels like that is the hard part that they're getting over, I bet somewhere in your towns or areas AA meetings, in your circle, is someone else who has some kind of non-standard notion of higher power. And you could bring it up and say, I just like to find help. I want to find a higher power. And people identified that in me, and they tried some things that didn't work. Some fellow at the first 7 a.m. meeting I was going to sort of heard me and came over to me and handed me, he said, here's your first big book, read chapter 5, We Agnostics. And at that time, that chapter pissed me off so badly. And it's not because it's a bad chapter, but it was, it was, and I didn't leave because of it. I said, this was a good try, right? This doesn't speak to me, but I see what you're trying to do, trying to help me find something. And I appreciate that. And it helped me sort of move the search along, and to which the guy's response was, okay.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is trust the power of program and the fellowship. Go to meetings and get out there, become vulnerable, talk to people in meetings. And what I've found is that I'm going to hear my story. If I go to enough meetings, I'm going to hear my story. And then I'm going to tell my story and somebody's going to hear something
And
similar.
trust the process.
Absolutely.
Well, that's perfect. It leads us right back to the reflection. The minute I stopped arguing, I could begin to see and feel right there. Step 2.
I did not plan that.
That's beautiful, though. Anything else you want to tell the audience before we wrap?
Oh, gosh. I can't think of a thing other than, if you're new, keep coming back, keep reaching for it. Don't let anything get in the way of finding your own path with this. And if I have had the good luck of saying something that helps somebody, I am grateful for that. It certainly served me well just to join the two of you and share what I had. And I listen to this every morning now. It's a great way to center my day.
Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Special thanks to Scott K. for joining us. And thanks to you for listening and for your support. If you want to join us online, you can find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Daily Reflection Podcast. I would love for you to subscribe on YouTube or on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. And maybe leave a comment or a rating. That would really help us get the word out. Appreciate your support. Have a great day, everyone.